Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Estate Market Analysis Summary for San Jose for October of 2023. This is our opportunity to review the numbers, see where we were for the month, and get a feel of where we might be going by looking back and seeing what historically has happened in October in San Jose in past months. And as usual, we're going to go ahead and start with the total number of active listings. And just think of this as all the homes on the shelf. So if you're a buyer, this is the number of homes you had to choose from. If you are a seller, this is the competition you had. How many homes were there out there competing with your home for the attention of all the buyers out there? So let's go ahead and take a look and see where we're at. Now, as always, what I do is give you a representation of the data so that you can get an idea of what the year-over-year change is, and then in addition, see what the trend has been in past months, going all the way back to July of 2022. So on the far right-hand side, you can see that red column says 825. That is the amount of homes that were on the market a year ago in October of 2022, and it's labeled that way at the bottom. The reason I do that is so you can compare side by side October of 2023 with October of 2022 and get that visual reference so that you can see what's going on. Now, in terms of year-over-year change, that's a 28% decline from the same time last year, and that represents 1.3 months of inventory, and you're going to see how many homes sold in the month as well in a couple of slides. But to think about that, if we froze the inventory numbers right where they are right now in October, and also froze the number of homes that sold in the month of October, this is how many months it would take to sell everything off: 1.3 months, and that is a ridiculously low number. Normally, a balanced market is considered 4.5 to 5.5 months. And we have not been anywhere near that for a very, very long time. So what can we deduce from this? We can see we've had sort of a steady increase since our low point of March of last year. We have, kind of a nice increase, I think, in terms of the number of homes that are on the market. You can see we had far more last year. In July of 2022, we had over 1,000. Now, also keep in mind what was happening in July and the last part of 2022. Remember, in March of 2022 was when we had interest rates start to go up. That's when they started that raise. And right around the end of 2022 is when they sort of peaked and we were starting to see interest rates 7-8%. So that explains why we had this big accumulation of inventory. We had interest rates go down just a little bit in 2023, and inventory has just been way low. And this has been a combination of low inventory, but also demand that exceeds inventory. And we'll see how those numbers play out here in the next couple of slides. Now, given what we're seeing here in October of 2023, what can we expect for the rest of the year? Well, if we look at last year, we would expect these numbers to drop in November and December and then start to flatten. And if we just look at last year, but I don't think we're going to see what we saw last year. I think in January and February, the first quarter of 2024, I think we're most likely to see bigger increases in the total inventory as we get into January, February, and March, because I'm getting a whole lot more folks asking me about the possibilities of listing their home. And I have listings coming up in the first quarter of next year. So frankly, I think we're going to see a bit of an uptick in the total number of active listings. So we'll see how that plays out. But that would be my guess if I wanted to try and estimate where this is going to go. Next, the new listings for San Jose in October of 2023 were up 15% from last year. Now, last year we saw this number at 486. October of 2023, that number was 572. If we look at the trends here, we can see that in September and October of last year, between September and October of 2022, we did see a decrease, but it was a much bigger decrease. And what's interesting to note here is we usually see a big decrease in the last quarter of the year, simply because that's wintertime, right? We're starting to head into when we're going to be dealing with Thanksgiving season, holiday season, Christmas season, rainy season, all the things that make it so that sellers just don't want to go on the market. They don't want to have people tracking mud through their house. They don't want to have to deal with this while they might have family or friends visiting during the holidays. They don't want to deal with it while they're on holidays. They don't want to deal with it while they're on vacation and maybe having a staycation at home. So we tend to see things slumping in the wintertime. Where do I think we'll go from here? Well, if it continues the trend, if we just follow the trend of last year, we tend to bottom out in December. My expectation would be we see the same thing, at least as a relative number from month to month, with a pretty big increase in January of 2024. And again, my guess is we're likely to see a bigger jump in 2024 than we saw in 2023. Well, that's a little bit of a prediction I'm making here, but I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility here. Next, let's go ahead and talk about total number of homes sold. And for San Jose, what's interesting here is that we sold fewer homes than we listed. So what does that mean? That means that we added homes to the marketplace. So we sold 452 homes in the month of October. And last year we sold 530. But if we compare October solds to October's listeds, we increased the total number of homes on the market by 120. So we saw the active inventory get increased by the usual month-to-month flow of new homes added to the market versus homes taken off the market by being sold. Now, this represents a 15% drop from the same time last year. If we wanted to try to look in the crystal ball and figure out where we're going to go in the coming months, we should expect to see homes sold decreasing in November, December, and bottoming out in January, but then starting its increase. And I don't see any reason why that trend wouldn't be the same moving forward. Now, in terms of pending sales in San Jose, we can see that we had a really almost a statistically zero change. In fact, it is a 0% change. 429 homes went pending in October of 2023 versus 431 last year at this time. Now, think about this for a second. This is a predictive thing. So in other words, if your home went pending in the month of October, that's a leading indicator of how many homes sold we're likely going to see in the following month or month and a half as homes close. So this is when an offer was accepted by a seller. So next month in November and then maybe early December, we would expect to see these closings. Just depends on how long these escrows take to close. But we didn't see that much of a decrease from September of 2023 to October of 2023. If we look for September and October of last year, we saw that we had a decrease then as well, but the decrease was a little bit more pronounced. But we see in past months, in the year ago time period, the follow-up months right up until December, these numbers tend to drop and then take an uptick in January. And then last year they peaked in May, which is very typical. These are, while the amount of transactions happening or the amount of sales going pending is not historically what we tend to see, the trend month to month is sticking with pretty normal trends for us in terms of what we see in the market moving forward. And as I said, pretty much a 0% change. So this has stayed very constant. The other chart here is to give us an idea of the sold versus pending, since the pending graph is a predictor of the sold graph, right? So if we take a look and we see these things have sort of come together, we're not seeing a lot of distance between them. So I would expect that since we've seen solds actually increase above pendings this month, and remember, pendings have been just a little bit higher than sales previously, we can expect a little bit less activity in terms of total number of homes sold in the upcoming months compared to what we've been seeing over the past few months. Just an interesting trend to note as we move forward. Next, average original list price. Now, I like to use original list price because this is a way to take a look into the psychology of sellers. This number represents the amount sellers agreed to list their home for in the MLS. And so this is the number, the very first price that was entered the MLS on the day it went on the MLS to get sold. This is the number that everybody was calibrated to. It's what the listing agent told them. It's what they agreed to in the listing agreement. So this is seller expectations. What did they expect to get out of their home? Now, the interesting thing to note is this is a 2.5% on average increase from the same time last year. Last year, we saw homes on average were seeing their original list price at $1,334,000. This year, $1,368,000. So a bit of an increase, a bit more expected on the part of sellers in terms of what they're going to get out of their properties. Now, what's interesting to note, and if we look at the trend here, as we see in October of last year, expectations rose as we moved into the end of the year, flattened out a little bit in January, which then jumped back up. I would expect to see the same thing. Usually in the first quarter of the year, we see expectations higher as sellers ramp up to the expectations of getting their homes sold as we head into the real estate market. That tends to be the hottest time of year. Next, let's go ahead and look at average sales prices. So this is a comparison. We can take this as an opportunity to compare expectations to realities. Now, what's interesting is despite sellers only expecting 2.5% more than they got last year, they're getting 9.2% above what the asking price was. So, and this number reflects what homes actually sold for versus the last chart, which sold us what they were hoping to get. So when escrow closed, this is how much the buyer actually ended up paying. And as I said, it's up 9.2%. So in October of 2023, we saw this number at $1.46 million. Last year it was $1.337 million. And in terms of the trend, we can see it's been generally going up. We kind of had a downward trend until February of 2023, and then things really started to recover a bit. And a lot of this is more reflective of where buying interest has shifted to. It doesn't mean there weren't homes at these higher price ranges. It simply means that more buyers showed up at these higher price points to buy these homes. And that's been the trend. And obviously a lot of this is linked with what we've seen interest rates do. But we're sort of in general seeing a line here that indicates to me a peak. And it wouldn't surprise me if this number continues to go up throughout the year and as we head into 2024. Next, if we look at percent of list price, now this is how much homes we're looking at the psychology of sellers a minute ago. This is the psychology of buyers. How much above or below asking price are homes selling? Now, if this number says 100%, that means whatever the list price was, on average, folks got their list price. But what we are seeing is 104.2%, meaning that sellers are getting 4.2% over their asking price on average. Last year at this time, they were getting just 0.2% below asking price, so at 99.8%. That's a net change of 4.4%. We peaked at 105.6 back in July of 2023. It is very normal to see this number tend to ramp up as we head into April, May, June, July, simply because that's when the market starts to heat up, right? Buyers want to buy before the kids need to go to school in September, or no one wants to move in the rain. So these are all things that tend to happen when we hit into the major season. In terms of expectations of where we should go, if we look at last year of October of 2022, we can see that it was down from September, again, not obviously at these levels, but it then continued to decline until December of 2022. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see that. But what's interesting is I honestly don't think we're going to go below 100%. I think we're going to continue to see homes mostly selling for asking price as we move into the new year, with it then turning and probably going back up again as soon as we get into February and March. So that'll be interesting to keep our eye on. I don't see things changing. The Fed seems to be telegraphing that they are going to reduce interest rates next year, which is only going to increase buyers, which is going to increase demand, which is going to increase the number of people making offers, which is going to increase the percent over asking price that homes sell for. Now, if we take a look, a minute ago, we were taking a look at average sales price, and I wanted to throw this out there just because I think it's an interesting number to consider, and I forgot to cover it. In general, in San Jose, sellers were getting $92,478 over expectations as a result of what sales prices were versus expectations in the same month. So what's interesting is county-wide, that number was $24,432 above expectations. In San Jose, it was over expectations at $92,000, but in Morgan Hill, Gilroy, and Los Gatos, all below expectations, in some cases by huge amounts. In Los Gatos, for instance, by over $500,000, it was below expectations. And that's been generally true in the market in Los Gatos. So the expectations in Los Gatos have tended to be higher. In Gilroy and in Morgan Hill obviously had the biggest discrepancy in our smaller local market of $162,000 below expectations for buyers as well, or sellers. Okay, next, let's take a look at days on market. This is how long it's been taking to get homes sold. It has been nothing but flat for the last 3 months. We can see last year in October of 2022, we were taking 27 days. It's now 37% less than that at 17 days. And let's be very clear about this. The reason why we're tending to see it hovering around 17 days is not because of market influences. It is because listing agents are simply not accepting offers till after a certain amount of time has passed, ranging from 10 to, usually it's 10 to 14 days, but I think this 17-day number takes into account two things. One, listing agents saying, don't give us an offer until such and such a date, or the seller will not consider offers until such and such a date. And then with lots and lots of offers in hand, there might be a couple of days back and forth of going back to buyers and saying, we have multiple offers, give us your highest and best. There's a rigmarole that goes around, there's countering, all these kinds of things can happen, which I think is why it's feeding into a 17-day days on market for folks. But we can see that in July, it was down to 13. But overall, once we get into these low numbers, Much more of it has to do with how long sellers agents are making buyers wait rather than really having to organically wait for offers to come in that long. So these numbers are just crazy for the seller and really an indication of how strong this seller's market is. Next, let's take a look at our last piece of data for October of 2023 for San Jose. This is going to give us an idea of the total number of price reductions. And this is an interesting number to look at because it lets us know what's happening in the market. Are sellers having to reduce their listing prices? And what's interesting is, as a year-over-year comparison, where the amount of properties that have been reduced in price is down 44%. It's at 27% in San Jose. It was 5% last month. And I think that this is reflective of folks who need to get their homes sold, who didn't sell during the peak of the season, right? Up until September, June, July, August, didn't see it happen. And now they've come to October and they're still on the market, so they've dropped their prices. I think that's what's behind this number. In terms of what I would expect, we'll see where it goes. It doesn't surprise me that we're seeing these kinds of numbers. My guess is as we move through the year, we'll see this number dwindle. And my guess is in the first quarter of 2024, we're not going to see this number being very large at all. It wouldn't surprise me if we're way back down to single digits on this one. All right, folks, I hope that has been helpful. If you'd like to get any help in buying, selling, or investing in real estate right here in Silicon Valley, feel free to reach out to me, Robert Whitelaw, licensed real estate broker right here in Santa Clara County. You can find me at soldbyrobert.com, where you can get all kinds of great information relating to get an instant valuation on the value of your home, all the way to starting your real estate search. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.